So to say that a lot has happened in the past week would be an understatement. I wanted to wait till this past week transpired and right before the free agency period started. I'm not sure if this is coming out the Monday in the morning before everything breaks loose or today on the 9th being the Sunday before free agency starts. I am thoroughly excited about what's to happen because so much has already gone through. I mean, we had the Raiders being a Shador Sanders landing spot for the longest. They trade for Geno Smith. We have the Browns who are dealing with the Myles Garrett situation. He gets re-signed today for $40 million a year with the no trade clause. And I think about $200 million guaranteed. You can't make any of this up. You really can't. It's really, you can only have this happen in the NFL, but we've had a lot of things that have opened up in terms of rumors, in terms of things that have been said during the combine. This is my technical post-combine NFL draft or NFL mock draft, if you will, because I have a bit of a shakeup, and it's going to be 2 rounds. We're going to have it be 2 rounds because we need to make sure that we hit on a few different things for certain teams. Certain teams have 3 picks within this draft. Some teams only have 1. It is what it is. But I think going into this, it's going to be a lot of exciting prospects going to certain teams that I feel like would fit the threshold that they need to. So starting off with the number 1 overall pick, it is going to be the Tennessee Titans. This is going to be no trades as of right now. There's a bit too much speculation. There's too much uncertainty in terms of the first pick and trading it, in terms of picks and trading in general. I feel like this is a spot that, as the Titans have already said, they're not going to pass up on generational talent. And I can't see any other situation other than Abdul Carter out of Penn State going to the Titans. It's just not possible that it goes any other way. Travis Hunter is not going to be a Titan, whether it's going to be Abdul Carter or a QB. I don't think they're going QB. I'm standing very firm on that, and I have for the past couple mock drafts. I think that Abdul Carter is basically Micah Parsons 2.0, and if the Titans are able to get a player like that to kind of bolster their defensive line in general, ever since letting certain players look for different trades or look for different teams that they could possibly go to while being on the Titans contractually, I think that it is the only way possible. Abdul Carter just is the man in this draft. He's a man amongst boys, and I feel like the Titans just can't pass up on that, whether a trade comes through or not. It has to be the level of maybe even like the Carolina Panthers and the Bears, where they just gave an absolute haul while trying to get the first overall pick. But the Cleveland Browns are now on the board, and I mean, at the combine, they said they're taking QB no matter what. Now, do we believe that? I don't know. They like to throw smoke screens. They like to throw certain things, but as of right now, I'm going to believe that there's one QB that a lot of teams actually want in the top 3, and that man is going to be Cam Ward. Cam Ward is the most mature QB prospect in this draft class without a doubt in our minds, and we know that for a fact, and I feel that my gut instinct from the get-go about Cam Ward was correct because I always had him above Shador Sanders whenever I started watching the games more and more, since I am a Hurricanes fan. Cam Ward impressed a lot this year, and the zip that he has on getting the ball out, while a lot of teams don't like his nonchalantness, I think that could be a strength at points. I really do. I love Cam Ward going to the Browns just to be even behind Deshaun Watson, so he doesn't have to rush into being that starter immediately in a crumbling franchise. I mean, they did just get back their defensive powerhouse. I was trying to find another word for it. Cornerstone is what I was looking for in Myles Garrett. And Cam Ward just seems like the only guy that's probably going to be taken high in this draft, to be honest with you. And that's just my gut instinct, but I'm going to have Cam Ward going to the Cleveland Browns. I like him a lot. I do like him a lot, but and it seems like a lot of scouts feel the same way just because of how things went with Shador Sanders in the combine and that whole time period in general. But moving on to the New York Giants, who I was very confident that they were going to go Shador Sanders for a moment in time, but they're tough. They're a tough spot. I can't really see one or the other with them. If there's no for sure pick for the New York Giants, I could definitely see Travis Hunter. I could definitely see Shador Sanders. It's even a possibility for someone like Tetero McMillan to go to the Giants just because of wide receiver talent. Putting him next to Malik Neighbors, they're getting very desperate because they have 1 year to figure it out. I personally feel as though the Giants are not going to take a chance on a rookie being Jaden Daniels and CJ Stroud from years past, if it's not Cam Ward. And there's been a lot of speculation about the Giants possibly trading for the number 1 overall pick for the best QB of the litter, which is Cam Ward. But if that's not possible, they stick at number 3, and I feel as though that Travis Hunter is the best case scenario for them if they're not able to get a QB in this draft. But I feel as though that they're going to get a QB in free agency, which specifically Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if Devontae Adams is going to be coming with Aaron Rodgers, but I feel that Aaron Rodgers should be going to the New York Giants. And if he's able to do that and they're able to get a QB later in the draft, in the second round maybe, in the third round possibly, Travis Hunter being your first round pick is not a bad thing at all, just because he has a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. Yes, he is listed as a cornerback. He's a cornerback wide receiver. I think Brian Daboll would be able to utilize him on both sides of the ball. But moving on to the New England Patriots, who I have been very adamant on getting offensive line for. And I know a lot of people haven't been enjoying that. I've kind of had a change of heart. Because I think that the $120 million that the Patriots have in cap space, they're going to use on the offensive line. And they're going to get whoever is left on the free agency block just because they want to use this number 4 overall pick for a talent. You can say a talent position. And that's going to be wide receiver. I'm going to have Tetero McMillan going to the New England Patriots. I think that they need that X receiver. They need that go-to guy for Drake May. This is a scenario that they don't get DK. They don't get A.J. Brown. Any of those guys that Mike Vrabel would love to have on the New England Patriots. This is a great scenario because then the timelines match up. You're not going to have somebody that's significantly older than Drake May trying to play along with Drake May until they inevitably retire. T-Mac, the best wide receiver in this draft class, and there's a very far gap as to the next one after that. But I love Tetero McMillan going to the New England Patriots alongside Drake May there. And at the 5th spot with the Jacksonville Jaguars, I had Mason Graham going to the Jaguars. I feel as though the Jaguars are the type of team to look at the fact that Mason Graham did not measure the way that a lot of teams thought that he would at the combine, and they're going to take that smokescreen literally. I think regardless, Mason Graham is going to be one of the top 3 prospects coming out of this specific draft, especially defense. But I just can't see the Jaguars not giving into that. I mean, this is the team that took Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson, although basically Aiden Hutchinson said that he didn't want to play for the Jaguars. But I'm going to take somebody that's been skyrocketing up offensive lineman boards, and that is Armand Membu. He has showed that he's very fundamentally sound. He's one of the best fundamental offensive tackles in this draft. And whether he's going to be tackle or whether he's going to be interior, I think they're probably going to try to move him inside. But I think regardless, he is going to be a great offensive lineman. And, I mean, he ran a 4.91, if I'm not mistaken. The last player to do that, I think, was Tristan Wirfs, and who played tackle. You can't really pass up on somebody that has continued to prove themselves over and over and over again throughout the offseason, throughout the season. I think he would be great to bring in because they need to protect Trevor Lawrence at all costs. And, I mean, Gladstone has been very adamant on saying that he needs to bring in players to protect Trevor Lawrence and also having the defensive line, which, I mean, has been the blueprint now ever since the Eagles won the Super Bowl. I feel like a lot of teams are going to be copycatting that. So moving on to the Raiders, who made a big trade to get Geno Smith as part of the Las Vegas Raiders for a third-round pick, which I kind of feel was a steal. I think they could have, or the Seahawks could have gotten at least a second-round pick, but they gave up a third. Doesn't really mean much because I think that was an extra third that they had, if I'm not mixing up trades. If I am, forgive me, but I'm actually going to have somebody that I had going later for a lot of the year, and that's going to be Ashton Jeanty. Ashton Jeanty, if you're in a situation that you don't need QB, you don't need Shedeur Sanders as a Raider, you have Geno Smith, they might pull a Falcons and take Shedeur Sanders regardless at the 6th spot because they just got a veteran quarterback. They're going to think that, oh, we should get a rookie this high up and have him sit behind this veteran quarterback, learn as much as possible. Cool, that's a smart idea. I just don't think that's a 6th spot smart idea. I think with a player like Ashton Jeanty on the board, you just can't pass that up. And I think that is the most ideal scenario for the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, I just love the dynamic that they could have on this team if they're able to get Ashton Jeanty at the 6th spot. And the new Raiders general manager has discussed emulating the Eagles' team building strategy. And I mean, you need a superstar running back in order to do so. And that's who Ashton Jeanty is. As the New York Jets at the 7th spot are in need of a few different positions, but the specific one that I'm going to have them taking is a tight end. And of course, that is going to be Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren is the best tight end prospect in this draft class. You're not getting better than Tyler Warren in terms of being able to just be everything you need in an offense. As a tight end, as a player, Tyler Conklin is good. He's great at points. I think they need to move on and move to a new dynamic with their new coaching staff. I think if Armand Membu was on the board at this point, I think they would take him here. But he's not. He got taken at the 5th spot. Tyler Warren is not a bad consolation prize going to New York and hopefully end up maybe getting a QB later, since we don't really know what their QB situation is going to be, as the Carolina Panthers are on the board and are going to take another guy that skyrocketed up these boards, and that is going to be Shamar Stewart. Shamar Stewart had an amazing Senior Bowl. He had a great combine. I think a lot of teams are thrown off at the fact of his stats. He doesn't jump off the page statistically, but I think if you bring him in after running a 4.58 40 and a 40-inch vertical and a broad jump of 10 feet 11 inches, I don't think you can pass up on just a behemoth, because that's who we thought Mykel Williams was going to be going into this draft. We thought that Mykel Williams was going to be this just absolute specimen, which he still is. He's just not to the level of some of these other players that have outperformed him in many scenarios. But Shamar Stewart has been compared, or you can see Shamar Stewart in the same light as a Jadeveon Clowney. And now I think Jadeveon Clowney is still under contract with them, so he can mentor Shamar Stewart. I think that's a great pick for them, as much as a lot of mocks have Jalen Walker going to the Panthers with how high they have him on their list. I'm going to have him going next, though. The New Orleans Saints taking Jalen Walker, listed at linebacker. I think he's better off the edge, although his size doesn't really help. But I like Jalen Walker a lot. He is a tweener who played mostly off-ball linebacker this past season. But from everything that we've heard, the NFL views him as a versatile chess piece. You can't really go wrong with him in the box. And bringing in Jalen Walker to a Saints defense, they've had multiple needs along their defensive front. So this would definitely fix at least some of them. Still unknown as to what's going on with Chase Young. But I think Jalen Walker should be able to bring a new era, since a lot of the players that they do have that have been great for the positions are only getting older. As the Chicago Bears are here at the 10th spot, and I will have them taking offensive line, and that is going to be Will Campbell. Yes, they traded for Joe Thuney, and they've made some moves for the offensive line. I still don't think that you can go wrong with Will Campbell, whether you're going to put him at tackle or whether you're going to put him at guard. They really do not want to bring back Tevin Jenkins, and I do not blame them. He was not reliable in the slightest this past season. Will Campbell can come in, either learn under Joe Thuney, or he can just be his natural position. I think regardless, Will Campbell's a great pickup for the Chicago Bears. I really can't see this being a bad scenario for them, although he is starting to be listed as an interior offensive lineman because of the measurables that he had at the combine. So we'll have to see what happens. A lot of Peter Skoronski comparisons as well. I don't know if I would go that far, but I like Will Campbell going to the Bears a lot. I think that's great for them. Even at center, actually. Will Campbell at center, he can see the field tremendously, and he makes call-outs all the time. He could possibly be center. That is a scenario that I would like to see if they end up solidifying that offensive line before he gets there. If he gets there. As the San Francisco 49ers, I mean, Mason Graham isn't going any further than the 49ers. Mason Graham is really the best defensive player other than Abdul Carter in this draft class to me. And as much as I would love to take him top 5, I just have to go off of what I've already heard and what I've seen in terms of rumors with Mason Graham and post-combine. But yeah, his measurables in Indianapolis did not help his case in being a top 10 pick. But I'm sure Robert Saleh is not mad at all about him dropping to this point. He was 24 pounds lighter than what Michigan listed him at, and his 32-inch arms place him in the 12th percentile for the position, although it really doesn't seem like it mattered much that he didn't have tremendously long arms. I think that he's still going to be great, and especially if he goes to the 49ers, although I feel that they need to go corner maybe later in the draft, since they're probably losing a lot of their defensive backs, as the Dallas Cowboys, who honestly probably weren't going to go Ashton Dempsey either way, are probably having a sigh of relief that their fan base is not going to be mad about them passing up on him, because they are going to be going Jahad Campbell in this mock draft. Jahad Campbell is really almost like a Jalen Walker. He had a fantastic combine. He measured in above the 50th percentile for height, arm length, and hand size among off-ball linebackers. And then he clocked in a 4.52 40-yard dash. And, I mean, a 1.52 second 10-yard split. And hit 10 feet, 7 inches in the broad jump. I like Jahad Campbell a lot. I've always liked him since the Georgia game. And I think he could have some high upside in this Dallas Cowboys defense that needs an off-ball playmaker, since Demarion Overshawn got injured, unfortunately. And they just need somebody of his caliber to come in and make an impact. As we move on to the Miami Dolphins, who I've had taking safety, and I wish that they would. I wish that they would take either Malachi Starks, Nick Mawari. But if Kelvin Banks is on the board at this point, I don't see them passing up on Kelvin Banks, because a lot of teams have Kelvin Banks as their top tackle in this draft class. Although his arm length is not necessarily what you want, his wingspan is 82nd percentile with an 84 3/8 inch wingspan. Jesus Christ. And I think that the Dolphins are looking to this upcoming season thinking that Teron Armstead is possibly going to retire. They're thinking as if he's not going to be playing. So offensive line needs to be the first thing that they look at, since they're possibly not going to have Armstead to protect Tua's left side. And I think Kelvin Banks can come in and be an immediate fit for this Miami Dolphins team. I think he can be a fit for any team that needs tackle as we move on to the Indianapolis Colts, and I'm going to have them taking one of the best corner prospects that I've seen in some time because of his versatility, and that's Jahdae Barron. Jahdae Barron got a 4.39 40, which they didn't confirm until much later in the combine, which I was glad that he was able to get under the 4.40. He wasn't very happy about the 4.40, but once he heard that 4.39, he was definitely happy about it because that just checked the last box that he needed to be this top 15 corner, maybe even the top corner in the class. You can see that the ADP on Will Johnson and Jahdae Barron is right there, although their ranks are different on PFF. As I am going to have Jahdae Barron going to the Indianapolis Colts. With his versatility that he has, I just think that the Colts would love that type of player, and how he solidified himself as an outside corner this past year for Texas. He was just willing and able to do anything that the Texas defense wanted him to, and thankfully he was tremendous at every single one of those positions. And I love Jahdae Barron coming out of this draft class. As the Atlanta Falcons, I am going to have taking somebody that had a good rise, but then had some character issues recently. But I still think that the Falcons will take a risk on him. Mike Green out of Marshall had a tremendous season this past season and had a tremendous Senior Bowl. He had a solid combine, but he didn't really do much. He just did the bench press, which he still ended up getting, I think, about 28 reps on the bench, which was impressive, showing his overall strength with shorter arms. I think Mike Green could come into this Atlanta Falcons situation and be an immediate impact off the edge. He has a 23% pass rush win rate this past season, and as I said, dominated the offensive tackle prospects going into the Senior Bowl, as the Atlanta Falcons have seen a specific corner prospect fall to this point, and I can't imagine that they're going to let him fall any further, and that is going to be Will Johnson. They have plenty of other needs. They have plenty of other situations that they could go with and that they could focus on. Obviously, defensive line is one of them. But if you have a player like Will Johnson fall to the 16th spot, you can't really pass up on that. His range is really anywhere from top 10 to the end of the top 20, and his recovery speed isn't great in man coverage, but he has great instincts in downhill stop and start agility to be an impact off zone defender. And I think that the Cardinals do have plenty of trench needs, but he's a potential CB1. I just can't see them passing up on that at all. As the Cincinnati Bengals, who are struggling lately, they have not been benefactors of much. I mean, they just re-signed Mike Gesicki. That's their first re-sign. Mike Gesicki is their first offensive re-sign, and they couldn't even get Trey Hendricks to sign a new deal. And they franchise tag T. Higgins. They're just pissing off all the stars, and then they're recovering players that they could replace either in the draft or in free agency, really. Mike Gesicki was on the Dolphins, and he wasn't really much of anything. As much as I liked him as a player, he wasn't wow. Like, we have Juwannu Smith now, who, honestly, I've seen him do more than Mike Gesicki did in the time that he was with the Dolphins. So I just don't understand the ownership. I don't understand the front office of the Cincinnati Bengals, but they're going to go defense. They are going to go defense, and I've had them going defense for a minute, but this is going to be defensive interior with Walter Nolan being the man coming off the board. Walter Nolan was the top recruit coming out of his recruit class, and I think that he showed that a lot this past year. I think that he's had a good offseason in terms of the Senior Bowl, and I just would like to see him playing next to Trey Hendrickson if they're able to retain Trey Hendrickson. I mean, we've seen now that Myles Garrett just comes back to the Browns for $40 million a year. Maybe the Cincinnati Bengals need to start talking, because the only issue with the Cincinnati Bengals right now is they keep waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. The number keeps going higher for Trey Hendrickson. They're only screwing themselves more. If they signed him before the Max Crosby deal, they would have been much better off. Now, Trey Hendrickson might need to get upwards of $35 million a year. He possibly couldn't get $30 million before the Max Crosby deal. But he was the top sack leader last year. And he's only been getting more and more consistent on that defensive line. It's just unfortunate that they screwed everything again, which the Bengals just tend to do a lot because they get all this talent, they get all these players, and then they never retain any of them, which is highly unfortunate. But moving on to the Seattle Seahawks at the 18th spot. With them giving up Geno Smith, I would have thought Jackson Dart would be the scenario here. But I think they might be focused on a certain free agent by the name of Sam Darnold. And I think that might be who they pursue a significant amount. And at this spot, I'm going to have them taking really an alien of a man. And we saw him at the Combine. Nick Emanwari really impressed in this Combine. And I think him being in this Seahawks defense, while he ran a 4.38 40, 43-inch vertical jump, and 11-foot 6-inch broad jump at 6'3" and 220 pounds, his game is almost like a hybrid box safety, and it won't be for every defense. It won't. But I like him being a Kyle Hamilton-esque box defender in this McDonald defense moving forward for them, since they seem to want to move to a new era of their team, since they just didn't like the Pete Carroll acquisitions. I don't know why not. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be taking defense as well. And it's going to be Donovan Azuruku. Hopefully I got that right. I've only called him by Donovan most times. But out of Boston College, Donovan has been really what the Bucs need. The Todd Bowles has admitted that they need to get to the passer without blitzing. And he is blitz happy basically every game, which is their Achilles heel at most points. But Donovan recorded 44 tackles for loss and 37 sacks with 4 pass breakups and 8 forced fumbles in the past 3 years. And he's really the textbook definition of what the Bucs need. And I think this is a great pick for them, although maybe other people, maybe you guys, would think that, oh, James Pierce Jr. would be good for them at this spot, or maybe even, I wouldn't even say Michael Williams. I think really James Pierce Jr. is the only guy that could possibly be it. They could even get Braden Swinson in the second round, but I just can't take him in the first, as the Denver Broncos are going to be the only pick that is really staying the same, and that's in Colston Loveland. Colston Loveland is just a perfect fit for the Sean Payton offense that he says that he needs a joker in it. I think that Colston Loveland can be that for them. He is a threat on the field no matter what, and there's really not much of anything else to say about it. There's just no more tight ends that the Chargers can take now, but I like the Broncos pick at that spot. I'm sure that if Nick Emanwari was there, they would take Nick Emanwari, but at this point, it's just going to be Colston Loveland. But moving on to the Steelers pick, they kind of sit in a good position, and specifically a good position at the QB. They've had a lot of uncertainty this offseason with Russell Wilson, with Justin Fields. Justin Fields, I don't think is coming back, which could be a Giants situation, actually. I would love Justin Fields on the Giants. Russell Wilson has more of a likelihood to come back just because of the fact that Geno Smith is now on the Seahawks. Clearly, Pete Carroll had his favorites, and it was Geno. The Steelers are sitting in a position right now that Shedeur Sanders is still on the board. This is the perfect head coach for Shedeur Sanders to come into and actually learn and develop and respect a coach, because Mike Tomlin is probably the most respected coach across the league as a man and as a leader. And Shedeur Sanders going to the Steelers just seems like the most likely situation for them. I mean, it's a surprise that he even made it to this point, but that's how I'm projecting it at this very moment. Before his pro day, maybe we see something on his pro day that we're just like, okay, he's top 5 now, no matter what. Teams are going to be trading up for him. I don't see teams doing that. There's a lot of immaturity in terms of him being able to get the ball off. There's a lot of question marks about his arm that just teams aren't going crazy about. And I just continue to believe that a Mike Tomlin-led team is going to help Shedeur Sanders in his future, and this could be a great future for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and possibly even more winning than what they've already had now that they actually have a solidified QB for at least 4 or 5 years. As the Chargers at the 22nd spot might be taking somebody that a lot of teams probably wouldn't take in the first round, but Harbaugh has a tendency of taking who he likes, and that's it. And that is going to be Tyler Booker out of Alabama. Bozeman is a free agent, and there's been reports of the Chargers giving Zion Johnson some work at center. So with that being said, if that's a permanent move, this is a perfect pick for the Chargers, since Tyler Booker has been the definition of a team player for Alabama, and a lot of team players for the Alabama Crimson Tide have said it. A lot of coaches have said it. Tyler Booker is the guy at guard going into this draft, and I think a team might reach in the first round or reach in order to get Tyler Booker on their team. As the Green Bay Packers, I am going to have them taking Shawan Revel, who unfortunately we were not able to see at the Combine because he still is recovering from a torn ACL. But Shawan Revel has really the prototypical Green Bay Packer cornerback build, and that is 6'2", 195 with long arms and big hands. I think he would have tested great if he went to the Combine, if he was able to go at the Combine. I think that with all the speed and explosive thresholds, he would stand out as a Green Bay Packer, especially if Jair Alexander is on his way out. As the Minnesota Vikings at the 24th spot probably wanted Shawan Revel, but they're going to go interior offensive line at this point, and that's going to be Gray Zabel, who another tackle that is possibly going to move inside, especially on a team like the Minnesota Vikings. I like Gray Zabel a lot. I think he's had a great offseason as well. He could be one of those guys that is what the Vikings need. They only have 4 picks in the entire draft, so they have to make sure that they don't waste it. And I think interior offensive line is something that they do need to focus on. Gray Zabel is a great offensive line talent, so you can't really go wrong with that at all. As the Houston Texans are here on the board, and they're also going to go offensive line, but it's going to be offensive tackle. And I am going to have Josh Simmons finally coming off the board. Josh Simmons, I mean, I think that Simmons would have gone higher in this draft if he weren't rehabbing from a major knee injury. But according to him, the rehab's going great. So we should be expecting him to even have a personal pro day to impress certain scouts before the draft. So this could be huge for him, and this could be huge for a lot of teams that are looking at the offensive line room and thinking that they're possibly not going to be able to get a prospect. And it just seems like the litter keeps getting deeper and deeper. But the Texans need interior offensive line help, but they could take the top talent in Simmons to play opposite of Laramie Tunsil and move Blake Fisher inside. And it would just help that offensive line in general that really struggled last year at points. Surprisingly, I didn't really expect that much, but they just need to take good players. They don't need to force any needs per se in terms of getting guard or center specifically. They could figure it out with their offensive line. Getting Josh Simmons, putting him at the opposite side of Laramie Tunsil is their best case scenario with what is on the board at this moment. As the Rams are on the clock at the 26th spot, and they have Cam Curl, they have Cameron Kinchins, and they both played well for the Rams in 2024. But when a player as impactful as Malachi Starks is available, you don't pass up on him. Whether he's going to play safety or slot, he could help get the most out of this Rams safety nickel defender rotation that they have going. And he had the fastest on-field speed during drills of any safety at the Combine. And personally, I want him on the Dolphins, but I just can't see them going anywhere else but anywhere else but Calvin Banks if he's on the board, as Malachi Starks goes to L.A. As the Baltimore Ravens are on the clock and are more than likely taking corner. And they're going to take the corner that had the fastest 40, and that is a 4.28 40 with a 39.5-inch vertical jump. And he missed time this past season due to a shoulder injury, but when healthy, he was a feisty run defender, which I tend to feel that that the Ravens need. Nate Wiggins sucks at run defending, and he hasn't gotten any better at that. And he's a good form tackler for the position. I believe that he will have a rise as much as a lot of these other players have had right before the draft, especially for a team like the Baltimore Ravens. Out of Kentucky, we're going to have Maxwell Hairston going there. As the Detroit Lions at the 28th spot, I am going to have James Pierce Jr. going there. The upside, the potential, the explosiveness, the just speed that James Pierce Jr. has can help that defensive line so much, especially with Aiden Hutchinson coming off of a bad injury. He can play opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, and if Aiden Hutchinson goes down again, he can be relied on. He can be the depth piece. He can be the guy for this team that they've been looking for in these past years. But he ran a 4.47 40. He had an impressive combine in the speed drills. His arms are shorter than we expected, but I think that regardless, with a 6'5" frame, he's mostly viewed as an outside linebacker speed type, but that is still a worth target for this Detroit Lions to pursue, as the Washington Commanders at the 29th spot are also going to go defensive line, but it's going to be a man that also had a big rise because of the Senior Bowl, and that's going to be Darius Alexander, defensive interior out of Toledo, as he showcased good explosiveness at the Combine, much like we saw at the Senior Bowl, like I've already said, and grading like an elite run defender this past season. I think that the Commanders could definitely look at him and think, we need that guy on this team, because he just has a ferocity and a need to get to the backfield. I like him a lot. I still like this move, even though they did get Jerzon Newton last year. I think you can't really go wrong with going with another defensive piece. As the Buffalo Bills at the 30th spot also are going to go defensive interior, and that's been very obvious, although they've been getting all their guys back, and unfortunately probably won't be able to get Myles Garrett going into the draft season. I'm going to have them taking Kenneth Grant to play alongside Ed Oliver. They need to get bigger. They need to get bigger in the defensive line. Thankfully, they released Von Miller, the hindrance on the team that they just thought that they could rely on, which never thought that they could rely on him. But Kenneth Grant fits in with this Bills' need of getting bigger and stronger. With him being 6'4" and 331 pounds, he moves very well. And I almost feel like him and Ed Oliver are really the same in terms of being able to move with a frame that you shouldn't be able to move with. But moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs at the 31st spot, I am going to go offensive line, and it's going to be Josh Conerly Jr. out of Oregon. I like Josh Conerly Jr. going to the Chiefs just because, obviously, it's a desperate need. They just traded Joe Thuney, which seems to be the foresight of Kingsley moving to left guard, so they think that they won't need left guard, or they don't want to risk losing Joe Thuney for nothing. So they give him to the Chicago Bears. They go with the tackle, and we go with Josh Conerly to keep this offensive line young. They franchise tagged Trey Smith, which I'm not sure if that's going to last very long in terms of being able to keep him. They have Creed Humphrey. I don't know if I love this offensive line that they're going to have, but I know that with Josh Conerly, they will at least have 3 solid pieces, but it's just the same situation that they were in last year with Joe Thuney being that third piece. I don't know. I think they need to make a little bit more moves in terms of that. But moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles, at this point in the draft, there's a lot of players that they could just go with and be happy with. And I don't think they need wide receiver. A lot of players or a lot of people have them taking possibly a Luther Burden at this spot. I would rather them go edge because Josh Sweat, I don't know if they're getting back. Bryce Huff did not perform well. Nolan Smith had a rise, but then that's one guy. I think they go with another Georgia man, and that's going to be Mykel Williams. An incredible run defender. I don't know if that's for certain. I just can't see them going wide receiver. I really can't, in the first round, at least. I can't see them going wide receiver or defensive interior. I like Mykel Williams. Maybe not enough to have full confidence in him, but I think that would be a scenario that would fit the Philadelphia Eagles and what they've been pursuing for some time and getting depth and players like that. But moving on to the second round now. At the 33rd spot, the Cleveland Browns. I will have them taking Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. We anticipate this is really just moving into a new era for the Browns while attempting to move on from Chubb, and gives Ward a true workhorse of a running back with a lot of talent going into the future. I like the pairing in this mock. I like the pairing if it actually happens, since Omarion Hampton could possibly be a first round talent if a team likes him that much, like the Chargers maybe. As the New York Giants at the 34th spot are going to go QB. They're going to go QB, and I'm going to have them taking Jackson Dart, which a lot of people have mixed views on Jackson Dart. A lot of people don't know how to feel about him. They don't know if he's really worth what a lot of people are saying, and some people want to go against the hype that he's been getting. I like Jackson Dart. I do like Jackson Dart. I like the way he played at Ole Miss. I think he has a lot of arm talent. I think he was impressive at the Combine. Maybe didn't jump off the screen to me, but I think that he is right up there. I think he's definitely making teams question if they want Shedeur Sanders or not. And I think Jackson Dart going to the New York Giants is the best case scenario for them. He has very good arm talent, as I've already said, and has high upside. I just really can't see him going before the second round. But if they're anticipating to get Rodgers or a bridge quarterback that can help Jackson Dart learn in this time, I just don't want them to put him into a situation of being the QB immediately. Although he's going to have the weapons to be able to do so. Travis Hunter, Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson. Running back needs to be fixed. But as much as I love Tyron Tracy, I just don't see that being their solution. Getting Jackson Dart in there behind a veteran quarterback would be a great situation for him and the Giants moving forward. As the Tennessee Titans at the 35th spot, I'm going to have them taking Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden impressed a significant amount at the Combine, and I mean, teams are willing to take him in the first round. I think he's an early second round pick. He was very fast in the 40, and he posted a 4.29 time. And the crazy part is that his top speed isn't even why he wins as a receiver. So I love him going to the Titans. I love him going to a situation that maybe they don't have the QB this year, but next year, if they end up shitting the bed again, that would be beautiful for them to get Archie Manning, or I'm not well versed on next year's QB prospects just yet. When we get closer to the draft, I will look into next year a little bit more, since I'll be certain about this one. But moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars at the 36th spot. Since they didn't go Mason Graham in the first round, I am going to have them going defensive interior in second. And Derek Harmon is a great prospect to get in the second as a defensive interior player. I think that he had just 1 year of notable production, but he showcased a player with high football IQ, consistent competitiveness, and NFL level quickness. So he can be an effective 3-technique defensive lineman for this team. I like him going alongside Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker. I like him in any scenario with those two on the edge, whether it's in 3 technique or not. But with the Las Vegas Raiders on the board at the 37th spot, I think they'd let the bleeding stop with Luther Burden and pick him at this point. Luther Burden can either be a top 15 pick for some teams, can be picked very high, or he can drop. I don't know why it happened. I don't know why a lot of teams just gave up on him. I like Luther Burden, and I think he would be tremendous. You get 2 offensive talents like that in this draft after getting Geno Smith. You get Ashton Zenty. You get Luther Burden. You have Brock Bowers. You can't really be mad about that. You really can't. I love that situation for Luther Burden and the Raiders. It'd be beautiful to see. They could be a playoff, maybe deep playoff contender. I don't want to jump the gun too soon because they haven't even picked Ashton Zenty yet. But the New England Patriots at the 38th spot, I think now will go offensive line. And that's going to be Donovan Jackson. Donovan Jackson was relied on heavily at Ohio State after Josh Simmons went down. And he stepped up to the plate. And I think whether he plays at guard, whether he plays at left tackle, wherever the Patriots need him to play, he is going to be a hell of a talent for this New England Patriots team. I like him a lot. I think that whatever team gets him is not going to be disappointed by it in the slightest. As the Chicago Bears at the 39th spot, I will have going edge. And as much as I'm not convinced about him, Nick Scorton still is high on a lot of teams' boards. And I can't ignore it. I like Nick Scorton, but he's just, I don't know. His weight, his size just kind of throws me off a little bit. He's almost like Shamar Stewart, that he's not going to have insane stats. He's not going to jump off the page. He is going to get a lot of pressures on the QB or just disrupt a lot of plays. Maybe that's what they look for. Maybe that is. I just don't see any other edge that they would go with at this point. And I'm going to have Nick Scorton going there as the New Orleans Saints are on the board. And Emeka Egbuka is still here. Wide receiver is still a need for them, especially with a player like Emeka Egbuka, who could definitely be a problem solver for them, since they don't really have that one guy, that slot receiver, or the one that's going to find the openings in the defense. And while there's a lot of rumors about Derek Carr recruiting Devontae Adams to the Saints, possible. It's very possible. I think Emeka Egbuka could fill that hole. I think he could, and I like Emeka Egbuka going to the New Orleans Saints, as he has a high floor, and he's just a savvy receiver as a borderline wide receiver 1 to a wide receiver 2. I just don't see Rashid Shaheed being like the guy for that team. He gets the deep balls, but you can only get that so much on certain defenses and take the top off of them. But the Chicago Bears are going to be taking another talent. And me personally, I like this prospect a lot. I've loved him throughout watching college football. While there is Quinshon Judkins, while there is Travion Henderson, I don't love that we have too much uncertainty as to them as players. I know that Quinshon Judkins hasn't been seen as very creative. I know that Travion Henderson, when he lacks confidence, he doesn't really get out there. So if he has a bad stretch, he's going to have a bad stretch. Cam Skattebo just plays like his ass is on fire. I don't know how to explain it, but he is a type of running back I would want on my team if I was starting a franchise and I needed a running back. Cam Skattebo is the guy that I would love to take in the second round, knowing that a lot of teams passed up on him for absolutely no reason. I love him out of ASU. I think that Cam Skattebo plays the game in a way that you just love to watch. You love to see it, and he just runs like he has a massive chip on his shoulder. And NFL teams will gravitate toward his mentality, his balance, and his tackle breaking ability. I mean, we saw a play, I think it was against Texas, if I'm not mistaken, that Oh, no, it wasn't Texas. It wasn't Texas. It was the game before that he just broke every single tackle going downfield. He had himself a game. I just love Cam Scatterbo. I really do. And especially being in that Chicago Bears offense, I would love that. He's a reliable guy that could really step up for that team. As the New York Jets are on the board at the 42nd spot, and regardless of all the other picks that they could possibly go with, whether it's defensive interior or defensive back, I'm going to have them going QB. And that's going to be Jalen Milroe. I know that it may be a bit early. I just want to emphasize. That this could be a possibility for the New York Jets. They could see that Jackson Dart is off the board, and they could panic at this pick. Maybe not panic, but just think that this is the safe pick for them moving into the future and get Jalen Milroe on the team. Yes, his decision-making just isn't fantastic. It isn't. But I can't imagine the Jets leaving day 2 without a QB with the upside of Milroe, while he is also a risk. I would think that this is what they seek out with trying to be patient with him to develop moving forward and having a new weapon in Tyler Warren and also being able to utilize Garrett Wilson. I like Jalen Milroe in this situation. I think his versatility with his speed is just unmatched. You can't look for that anywhere else. He just really needs to mature in his decision making and ball placement, and I think that he will put the work in if need be, especially for a team like the New York Jets, as the San Francisco 49ers are on the board, who took Mason Graham in the first round. Possibly we're going to take offensive tackle at one point, and I'm going to have them taking offensive tackle here. Arante Ursary out of Minnesota was a first-round talent at one point, but kind of died off in terms of his hype for a little bit. I like him coming out of this one. He brings alluring size and length to the tackle position for the NFL. He has good hands, an explosive first step forward, and a quick footwork to be an impactful zone run blocker. And with a player like Christian McCaffrey behind you, they're going to need that, especially with the uncertainty of Trent Williams. You need to start figuring out what you're going to do for the future for this offensive line. As the Dallas Cowboys are on the board at the 44 spot, and this is where I'm going to have them taking halfback since they weren't able to take Ashton Dempsey in the first round, which they probably wouldn't have regardless. I think they love a player like Travion Henderson. Travion Henderson is somebody that, while he is playing confidently, like I've already stated, shines with his agility and long speed. He lacks some size for tackle breaking and pass blocking, but he remains a high effort player in those areas, and he tries his damnedest to get to the end zone. And he just seems like a good speed component of an NFL committee running back, which they have a lot of players in that halfback room that they could possibly use as a committee. With losing Rico Dowdle, I don't know if they're going to lose him, to be honest with you. But the Indianapolis Colts at the 45th spot, I will have going edge, because they did go corner, and I think Princely out of Ole Miss could be the guy for them. I think that he feels like a specialized finesse pass rushing outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. If you want him to be more versatile than that, you might be disappointed with his lack of consistency, but I think regardless, Princely could develop into somebody that if you put him in his role, he's gonna perform it to the best on the team, really. I like it. I like him going to the Colts. I think that he could be a backfield difference maker for the most pivotal plays of the game. So as much as I'm not in love with that pick, I think that is the best pick for them. As the Atlanta Falcons are going to go with defense once again, but it's not going to be the front seven. I'm going to have them taking Trey Amos out of Ole Miss, another Ole Miss player coming off the board. I like Trey Amos. I think he has a CB2 floor with a CB1 ceiling, or the potential to be a CB1. His blend of size, movement skills, and coverage scheme versatility is the most ideal, especially getting him in the second round for the Falcons. I like the pick for them. And I think I'm going to like the pick for the Cardinals as well, because now they're going to be able to go defensive line. But it's going to be Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. I've been liking Tyleik Williams, although he seems at points to be mainly a powerful interior defensive lineman in terms of just being able to pass rush or being able to run defend and lacks pass rush. He makes that nose tackle projection his best, and I think the Cardinals will be okay with that and being able to utilize him in that aspect, as the Miami Dolphins end up getting a safety regardless at this spot, and that's going to be Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame. Watts is the best ball-hawking safety in this class, and that's thanks to his intelligence and ability to break on the football. And I think even with his tackling woes, I think that he will be able to get picked by a team like the Miami Dolphins. I think ideally it would be the Miami Dolphins, since Javon Holland more than likely is not going to be back on the team. As the Cincinnati Bengals at the 49th spot, I think are going to have to go defense again, just because of the Trey Hendrickson situation. There's still uncertainty about it. There may still be uncertainty about it going into the draft, but I think they just need to go with the fundamentally sound player, maybe possibly be depth for this defensive line. That's going to be Landon Jackson coming out of Arkansas. He has had some moments, but going to this Bengals defense that lost Sam Hubbard to retirement at 29, I think his overall pass rush win percentage has been low throughout his career, which, I mean, it presents him as a high-floor, versatile defensive end who can be a solid starter for odd or even fronts. I like him fundamentally, though. I do. Oh, my gosh. At the 50th spot, the Seattle Seahawks. This is a situation that maybe they were hoping Jalen Milroe was still here. Maybe even Jackson Dart. There's no more QBs that they'd probably go with in the second round. They might pursue that in the following. But at this spot specifically, I'm going to have them going with Demetrius Knight Jr. Demetrius Knight Jr. is going to be one of the older prospects, if not the... No, he's not the oldest. He's just going to be one of the oldest prospects in the 2025 NFL Draft, but he is a mature player with good processing and fundamentally sound tackling. And his run defensive angles can be a bit of a vulnerability for a defense and a bit over-aggressive, but I think he'll take that trade-off due to how well he moves in coverage when pursuing the ball carriers. I like him going to this team. I like the fit for them moving forward. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to go with a hometown man in terms of home state. Azarai Thomas. I've loved Azarai Thomas for a while now. I think that he could possibly be first round if a team really likes him. There's a lot of these players, or there's a certain amount of these players, that if a team likes them to a certain point, they could use their first round pick on them. They could feel that, oh, we don't need this other position. Let's just take our guy and let's be confident with that. And I think Azarai Thomas has the possibility to be that. But out of Florida State, I like the fit for him going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that he lacks some strength in a few areas, but he plays the position with high intelligence to be a scheme versatile CB2. And I think that could help that Bucs defense a little bit more, since that was a vulnerable spot. They got away with it just because the players that they had were very hungry. But now you're bringing in some talent, as the Denver Broncos are here on the board. And while they took Colson Loveland in the first round, I'm going to have them going with defensive interior here, and that's going to be TJ Sanders. TJ Sanders is a true three technique who wins with linear and lateral quickness to shoot gaps and disrupt. He really has to improve in his hand precision and play strength to be a full-time starter. But I think he can improve with that overall. But at worst, he is a contributing rotational 3 technique player. As the Pittsburgh Steelers at the 53rd spot, I am going to have going wide receiver, although I've had them going in the first round with the Mecca Buka. I'm going to have them going Xavier Restrepo. You can call me a biased person. I like Xavier Restrepo in the slot, and I feel that the Steelers have kind of lacked that. They use Calvin Austin in that position, but I like Xavier Restrepo as just a reliable receiver for them. I like him coming out of He's a strong slot receiver at that, so I like him playing alongside George Pickens specifically. I mean, if they're not going to keep George Pickens, these two right here could definitely be a situation, or Jaden Higgins even. I like Jaden Higgins a lot, but with the Chargers on the board, I almost said the Packers. With the Los Angeles Chargers on the board, I am going to have them finally taking a halfback, and they're going to take a chance on Quinshawn Judkins, who lacks creativity for the most part, but if he's behind a great offensive line, he's able to figure it out, which was their scenario in Ohio State. And I think the Chargers have a pretty good offensive line, especially now that they're going to get Tyler Booker on the team. That would be a great fit for Judkins and the future of that team, since J.K. Dobbins is more than likely not coming back onto that team. But I like Judkins as a strong north to south runner who generates impressive speed to power for consistent yards after the catch. So yeah, I like Judkins going to the Chargers. The Packers on the board, though, are going to go with defense again, but obviously not defensive back. We're going to go with an edge, and that's going to be Braden Swinson. Braden Swinson is a great pass rusher. He didn't get much of... He didn't get much of any playing time up until this past season, but he definitely impressed when he did get it. I think that the only lacking part of the Packers defense was the pass rush, and bringing him in, it's just going to make them excel a little bit more. He shows very active hands and a good understanding of rushing the passer to yield consistently high pass rush win rates. And if he continues to get stronger defending the run, he can become a starting 3-4 edge player with impact pass rush potential. I love him going into that scenario. Maybe it doesn't happen. That's just my most ideal scenario for him. As at the 56th pick, I'm actually going to have the Bills going wide receiver, and that's going to be Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. Jaden Higgins had an impressive combine. He is a reliable possession receiver who can run a diverse route tree from any alignment thanks to his impressive foot quickness. I think him being utilized inside of this Buffalo Bills offense could make them even more of a weapon, just because now they have a bunch of different guys that aren't necessarily wide receiver ones, but they have a QB1 in Josh Allen who can really stand out moving forward. They re-signed Khalil Shakir. They still have Keon Coleman. I don't know what's going to happen with Matt Collins, but I like Jaden Higgins going into this scenario at the 56th spot for this Buffalo Bills offense. As the Houston Texans, I've had them taking this guy in the first round at some points in the college football season, but I'm going to have them taking Alfred Collins out of Texas, a massive man out of Texas. He's a long, strong interior defensive lineman with the versatility to play anywhere from 0 technique to 5 technique. His pass rush profile and inability to disengage quickly limit his ceiling, which is very true. We saw that a lot in terms of facing ASU because he was great at defending Cam Scatterbo for a while. But then he just, once they figured him out and they figured out that defensive line, Cam Scatterbo started breaking out. But moving on to the 58th pick with the Carolina Panthers, I'm going to have them going defensive line once again, but we're going to try to go with the interior, and that's going to be Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee. I like Omar Norman Lott in terms of what's left here. The only other player that I thought about was Deion Walker out of Kentucky. But I think Omar Norman Lott is an athletically gifted, undersized 3 technique who, with better hand usage and pass rush plans, can be a contributing starter for this Carolina Panthers interior. He's really just there to complement Derek Brown at that point, or at least try to be a unit there with Derek Brown. And with them already getting Shamar Stewart in the first round, they should be good for years to come with how heavy they invested into that defensive line here. As the Baltimore Ravens are looking for somebody younger for their line, or maybe even say off-ball Sam linebacker maybe. And that for me is going to be Josiah Stewart out of Michigan. Josiah Stewart is a juiced up pass rusher with less than ideal measurables. His effort and leverage give him a chance to win any rep, but he lacks pass rush nuance to win with more than those attributes. And a good first step. His best spot in the NFL might be as an off-ball Sam linebacker, where he can be used as a blitzer more than just a straight edge defender, which I feel like it's almost like a SOOO. You can even say Kyle Van Noy if you really want to compare it. But I think him going into this Baltimore Ravens defense should help them, and it should help him, because they like to rotate, they like to get their guys fresh, and they like to have high energy players, which Josiah Stewart has plenty of that. As the Detroit Lions at the 60th spot, I take them as a team that if they like a guy, they're going to take him. And I think that while Ratledge isn't the most versatile player or the most dynamic athlete, he is solid in his pass blocking technique, and downhill power in the run game. And with what the Detroit Lions need, and with the uncertainty of their offensive line or interior offensive line going into the future, this could be a pick that, while yes, it's not great because ADP 90, taking him at the 60th spot, I think he can learn a lot behind the players that they currently have on that offensive line. And I mean, they took Jake Campbell in the first round when I didn't even have him going maybe even second most of the time that year. As the Washington Commanders at the 61st spot, we are in the home stretch, folks. It's been a long one, but the Washington Commanders at this spot, I think could go corner. And he's been one of my favorite corners in this draft class, and strictly to be a corner. This is almost like Nate Wiggins last year, just bigger, I would say. Darian Porter out of Iowa State has been an interesting prospect. He's a wide receiver turned cornerback with ideal ball skills, and he ranks above the 95th percentile in height and length, and has an elite track background, which translates to the field. I feel that him going to this team, playing as maybe like the CB3, CB2 behind some better cornerbacks that the Commanders already have, he doesn't have to feel the pressure of being the guy immediately. He can develop, he can be a great corner alongside those players, and I think that's a great fit for him. As the Buffalo Bills have another pick at the 62nd spot here, and I'm going to have them taking halfback because I haven't heard anything good about the James Cook situation. As much as I would like to see James Cook back on the Bills, as much as the Bills probably want to see James Cook back on their team, they need to go with the halfback if he's not going to be there. They need to go with the halfback that can fit the scheme that they like to run. And the scheme that they like to run is a committee, which last year was Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, and James Cook. James Cook never had above a 50% snap share at any point in the season, even in the playoffs. I think that if you get a player like Caleb Johnson, who had a great combine, like Caleb Johnson, who doesn't really excel as a third down back, but you have players that already do so, it's going to benefit both sides. It's going to benefit the Bills because Caleb Johnson is a hell of a talent. He's physically gifted, and he excels with the ball in his hands. I think he has great vision. I think he's a great early down back. I'm not in love with him for a third down back. They need to maybe figure that out. They want him to be that, but his lack of polish and reliability in third down situations could keep him from being an every down running back for the Buffalo Bills. As the Kansas City Chiefs, I am going with a maybe different player than a lot have them going with. I'm going to go with a linebacker, and that's going to be Chris Paul Jr. out of Ole Miss, which, with no relation to Chris Paul himself, Chris Paul Jr. needs to add some mass to his frame in order to be a legitimate starting will linebacker. They did just re-sign Nick Bolton, so this is more of a depth pick for them, but I like it as a depth pick, although thanks to his athleticism and intelligence, he has more of a possibility to be involved in the defense. But until he adds more mass to his size, I don't see them putting him in except for maybe special teams. They just need to help him out with that, as the Philadelphia Eagles at the 64 spot are going to take another player that has high upside, and a lot of teams are avoiding like the plague, really. And that's going to be Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame. Still dealing with the injury, his hip injury specifically. He's a smart, smooth-moving man coverage cornerback with good instincts for making plays on the ball. And getting back to form after his hip surgery and getting a bit stronger are the keys to a future starting outside cornerback role in a man coverage system. But really any system is why I'm picking him for the Philadelphia Eagles. I like him as a Philadelphia Eagle, especially with Darius Slay gone. I know a lot of people are not going to think, oh, we need corner, we need corner. We have corner as the Philadelphia Eagles. You just can't pass up a player like Benjamin Morrison already still being here with the players that are on the board. I just can't see them going with anything else but him, since edge is the majority. I like Benjamin Morrison going to the Philadelphia Eagles, and that is going to do it for my 2-round mock draft. Wow, that was a mouthful, but I loved every moment of it. I think I'm very confident with how this went. The only one that I was not crazy about was the Bucks pick, but I've been seeing more about Donovan. I've been liking more about Donovan. I wanted to involve him, although I'd probably go a different type of edge. The Seahawks obviously are a bit uncertain. We have to go through free agency. I think that they're going to go with the QB in free agency, and they're going to make sure that they get one. If you have any opinions about this mock draft, let me know down in the comments below. It was definitely a long one. Hopefully you did enjoy it, but I'm down for any opinions or anything that you guys have to say about the draft. Maybe you don't like the Giants not going with a QB. I get it. If you're a Giants fan, you're scared that they're not going to go with QB again. I'm not crazy about the QBs in this draft class other than Cam Ward, and I will stick to that. Shedeur Sanders going to the Steelers. I'm sure a lot of Steelers fans like that. Maybe teams like the Seahawks didn't like that he dropped past them. I don't see Shedeur Sanders going to the Seahawks. I really don't. But let me know down in the comments below. I'm down to talk about it. But while you're down there, please like so more people can see it, so the algorithm can push it to more and more people. We can have more of a conversation and maybe even watch the mock draft together whenever it is live in April. And subscribe so you don't miss out on the following mock drafts, because after this free agency period has kind of settled down, there's going to be another one dropping, and I'm going to make sure that I get on all my P's and Q's. You guys let me know if you want a 2-round or just a 1-round for that one. I like the 2-round. Maybe it was a bit of a stretch at points with certain teams. The Bills having 3 picks, I didn't realize, but that's great for them to have that in the top 60. But yeah, with that being said, I will see you in the next video. Peace.